Barely 45 minutes outside Manhattan lies a desolate coastal stretch, peaceful, utterly isolated, and concealing an unimaginable horror. It was December 2010 when a Suffolk County canine unit hunting for a lost girl unearthed an absolute nightmare. 4 female skeletons lay abandoned along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach, deliberately concealed within decaying burlap sacks. Dubbed the Gilgo Four, they were merely the beginning. Subsequent months yielded additional horrors, culminating in 10 complete sets of human remains. A phantom was preying upon the vulnerable. The victims were largely youthful females, individuals operating within the perilous shadows of sex work. For over 10 agonizing years, the investigation went completely cold. Grieving relatives believed retribution would forever elude them until an abrupt, shocking revelation emerged in July 2023. A supposedly ordinary Massapequa Park commuter, architect, and family man lived completely undetected. Prosecutors now label him a predator. This chronicles the chilling Long Island serial killer inquiry. It details the blunders, critical shifts, forensic trails, and the newly indicted suspect, Rex Heuermann. Piecing together this convoluted timeline requires the expertise of 2 veteran reporters who tracked the madness from entirely distinct angles. Raised on Long Island and residing in Los Angeles, Alexis Linkletter produces gripping true crime documentaries. The television host and investigative journalist possesses deep ties to both the region and the nuanced craft of exposing secrets. Dedicating countless hours to hunting the truth, she created the acclaimed Project Unraveled, the Long Island serial killer. This audio and visual series illuminated catastrophic law enforcement breakdowns while finally letting the heartbroken families speak their piece. Emmy-winning reporter Mary Murphy has dedicated 40 years to dissecting New York's most notoriously complex criminal sagas. She tracked the Gilgo Beach slaughter for 12 years, ultimately detailing Rex Heuermann's July 2023 capture, maintaining her relentless frontline coverage. Originating from Queens, after a lengthy television career, she transitioned her fierce investigative focus into the digital space at marymurphyofficial.com. Together, these women offer profound perspective on the grim events and the maddeningly sluggish crawl toward capturing a monster. This expansive hunt for a phantom butcher was not initially a homicide probe. It began with someone simply vanishing. During May 2010, 23-year-old Jersey City resident Shannon Gilbert vanished from the secured Long Island enclave of Oak Beach, following an encounter arranged via Craigslist. Chauffeur Michael Pack transported the young woman into the quiet Oak Beach subdivision, dropping her off for a scheduled rendezvous. The patron was Joseph Brewer. Mid-visit, absolute terror overtook her, sending her fleeing frantically from his residence into the dark streets, while her driver lost her completely. Amidst her panicked flight, she initiated a harrowing 23-minute 911 dispatch. State Police Emergency Line. Hello? Please, they are hunting me down. Forgive me. A man is chasing me. What is your location? He's coming. All right, tell me your whereabouts. He's right behind me. Ma'am, specify your location. I have absolutely no idea. Are you in a vehicle? Negative. I'm trapped indoors. I apologize. I'm indoors right now. Whose property? I cannot say. Are you able to track my signal? So sorry. Please pinpoint my location. We lack that capability. State the digits you are dialing from. Excuse me? Provide your exact cellular digits immediately. They are hunting me. Who exactly? Speak to me. Are you physically unharmed? How will you proceed? What are your intentions toward me? I asked him why. What? Honestly, I have no clue. You dialed my line. The exact trigger for her blood-curdling shrieks remains an absolute mystery. Investigators theorize she tumbled down a staircase while desperately attempting to escape. Afterward, a panicked Shannon frantically pounded on neighboring entryways, eventually rousing one male resident. He described her as completely disoriented. Despite claiming a mortal threat, she abruptly bolted back into the consuming darkness. Explain the problem. Are you secure? What happens next? How do you plan to handle this? Pardon? I remain uncertain, yet something felt terribly off. Catastrophic errors plagued the initial response. Disoriented during that frantic 911 dispatch, Shannon Gilbert mistakenly identified her location as Jones Beach, completely misdirecting authorities. The dispatcher subsequently routed the line directly to the state troopers, assuming that, logically, state troopers maintained strict jurisdiction over coastal zones and public parks. State troopers responded in place of the Suffolk County Police Department, but their target had already vanished. Days agonizingly slipped by before anyone raised a significant alarm regarding her absence. That solitary outcry belonged to Shannon Gilbert's mother, Mary Gilbert, amidst a total media blackout. Headlines remained utterly barren. It was just a desperate mother demanding answers. Meanwhile, the shadow pursuit for Shannon continued. Investigators made routine attempts, though deeply unsettling mysteries shrouded her sudden disappearance. By December 2010, a patrolman initiated what the department classified as a routine training sweep, an overlapping sweep for Shannon Gilbert traversing Ocean Parkway, practically bordering Gilgo Beach. That was when Blue, a specialized recovery canine, unearthed a grim discovery. Officer John Malia instantly assumed, "We finally found Shannon Gilbert. Our phantom target is finally secured." Yet, a chilling realization immediately washed over them. This was not Shannon. The identity: Melissa Bartholomew. Melissa Bartholomew was 24 when she vanished on July 12, 2009, from her subterranean Bronx apartment. Suffolk County investigators noted, post-cosmetology graduation, Bartholomew departed Buffalo, New York, seeking financial avenues, eventually entering the underground companion trade. Before vanishing, she mentioned an overnight rendezvous with a gentleman. Her mother filed a formal absence report 6 days later, on July 18th. Cellular pings traced a phantom digital footprint through Manhattan, Freeport, Massapequa, and Lindenhurst on Lying Island. Then, the psychological torment commenced. During July and August 2009, an unidentified male utilized Bartholomew's device to aggressively harass her relatives. "Think she is ever coming back?" He taunted her younger sibling on August 26, the family attorney revealed. "She is gone. I permanently silenced her," the voice declared before disconnecting. During subsequent contact, the phantom graphically detailed the intimate, illicit violations he subjected Bartholomew to. "The insomnia remains relentless when my mind wanders there," her mother, Lynn Bartholomew, confessed to journalists in 2011. She meticulously documented every investigative fragment in a journal, forging deep connections with the relatives of other tragic targets. Subsequent grid searches unearthed 3 more tragic discoveries. Maureen Brainard-Barnes was just 25 when she faded into the shadows on July 9, 2007. Facing an impending eviction, she lived in constant, agonizing terror of losing her child to the system. Pure desperation drove her toward New York City, drawing her deeply into the risky, private companion industry. On her final day, she contacted a friend back in Connecticut, mentioning an upcoming private, out-of-town booking. Suffolk County Police note that 5 days later, on July 14th, a companion officially alerted the Norwich Police Department. Her final resting place emerged over 3 years later, on December 13, 2010, bordering Northern Ocean Parkway. Her sister, Melissa Kahn, informed the press in 2011 about her exhaustive, years-long quest for truth, obsessively analyzing Maureen's digital correspondence, foreign documents, and maintaining unwavering solidarity with fellow grieving relatives. Ken portrayed her sibling as fiercely devoted. Facing ruin and eviction after a seasonal telemarketing stint, Maureen reluctantly entered the underground companion trade. Maureen was completely robbed of the opportunity to showcase her brilliance. Her sibling lamented to the public, "We remain haunted," forever denied the woman Maureen was destined to become, all because her future was violently stolen. Maine native Megan Waterman, aged 22, was last spotted by relatives on June 6, 2010, boarding a New York-bound Concord Trailways bus. According to Suffolk County Police, Waterman, resorting to the adult entertainment circuit to financially sustain her little girl, exited the Holiday Inn Express on Long Island on June 6 to rendezvous with a private patron. When she vanished, her caretaking family alerted authorities on June 8. Radio silence of this magnitude was profoundly uncharacteristic for her. 6 months later, on December 13, 2010, Waterman's tragic fate was confirmed near Gilgo Beach. Desperation eventually drove her relatives to collaborate with a non-profit-backed private intelligence team launching a shadow investigation. Doyleur, an operative on that squad, disclosed in 2011 that an awestruck Waterman bragged to her mother about entertaining elite clientele physicians, attorneys, and badge-wearing authorities. "Man possessed a deeply cherished soul," her aunt Elizabeth Meserve reflected. This suffocating darkness has fractured countless realities. 27-year-old Amber Lynn Costello shared a West Babylon, Long Island residence with roommates before fading into the shadows on September 2, 2010. Trapped in the grip of severe narcotics dependency, Suffolk County authorities noted she turned to the underground sex trade to finance that deadly vice. Her final known moments involved stepping out to service a buyer, walking into the night without a mobile device in hand. Searchers ultimately uncovered her lifeless body near the desolate stretches of Gilgo Beach on December 13, 2010. Bystanders informed detectives that this specific buyer was a returning visitor. He was characterized as a towering Caucasian man, spanning roughly 6'4" to 6'6", concealing his face behind large, oval-shaped spectacles. An onlooker chillingly recalled the shadowy figure looking remarkably like a hulking monster. In 2011, Kim Overy, the victim's sister, informed the press about publishing a classified listing, desperately begging fellow underground workers to expose violent patrons. Overstreet confessed back then that the unknown circumstances of Amber's demise gnawed at her daily, turning the hunt for the perpetrator into an absolute obsession. Sleepless nights were spent digging through data, desperately reconstructing those final movements. Eventually, the remains of 4 distinct casualties surfaced, including Maureen Brainard-Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello. Spaced roughly 500 feet apart, this tragic collective would permanently go down in history as the Gilgo Four. Beyond the desolate geographical dumping ground, reporters quickly began drawing disturbing parallels connecting these shattered lives. The targets shared remarkably slight builds and suffered total restraint. 3 had been tightly secured using rough woven fabric material, initially dismissed by experts as standard gardening mesh. It took the eventual capture of a prime suspect to reveal a far darker truth. The material was actually specialized concealment netting utilized by waterfowl stalkers. Ultimately, the predator wrapped 3 of his targets in this deceptive fabric, tightly securing their skulls, torsos, and lower limbs. Conversely, Moore and Brainard-Barnes endured a different method of captivity, restrained across 3 separate physical points using leather straps. Upon cracking their real names, a grim digital footprint emerged. The majority had been actively soliciting buyers via Craigslist. News outlets eagerly weaponized that detail, plastering the classified's connection across front pages, completely ignoring the platform's vast, multi-purpose nature. Further digging eventually exposed that a handful of the deceased utilized platforms including Backpage.com for sex work. A toxic wave of deeply degrading, stigmatizing rhetoric quickly flooded the narrative, a venomous tone actively echoed by the sworn protectors themselves. Initial media briefings captured commanding authorities deploying this exact derogatory phrasing while supposedly attempting to rally their lower-ranking personnel to actively pursue the expanding investigation. That type of toxic framing carries catastrophic consequences, systematically eroding any genuine momentum or desperate need to catch the phantom. Grieving relatives watched in pure dread, fearing their daughter's involvement in underground labor would rob them of the basic human dignity and rigorous justice afforded to conventional citizens. The striking uniformities linking the deceased, their dangerous professions, their method of concealment, and their shared graveyard presented a terrifying, undeniable pattern. Investigators were abruptly forced to accept that an apex predator was actively hunting in their jurisdiction. However, unearthing the Gilgo Four was merely the opening chapter of an expanding nightmare. That initial quartet materialized during the freezing, unforgiving winter month of December 2010. Investigators desperately pushed to sweep the rest of Ocean Parkway, yet brutal weather halted their progress until operations could finally reboot in April 2011. That spring awakening triggered the excavation of more human wreckage, though these subsequent finds starkly contrasted the pristine horror of the original quartet. Search teams stumbled upon scattered limbs and violently severed body parts. The unearthing of a slain female toddler ultimately ignited a massive, uncontrollable journalistic frenzy. Panic bred a terrifying new theory. Was this the gruesome handiwork of a lone psychopath? Or were multiple butchers using the same dumping ground? Ultimately, searchers pulled 10 distinct sets of human wreckage from the brush-lining Ocean and Parkway, spanning 2010 through 2011. The inquiry flatlined for over a decade. While federal agents initially helped scour the treacherous terrain, They were completely locked out of the core detective work. Higher-ups deliberately stonewalled their involvement, a shadow operation allegedly orchestrated by the ruling law enforcement commander at the time, James Burke. Anyone tracking this chilling saga understands that a deeply disturbing layer of institutional rot infected the Long Island serial killer probe from its very inception. Dominic Varon spearheaded the detective squad during the opening phase of the Gilgo Beach manhunt. Yet, as 2011 drew to a close, right when Shannon Gilbert's remains finally surfaced from the marsh, a massive political overhaul completely swept through Suffolk County. A freshly inaugurated executive seized power, immediately packing the upper echelons with his own hand-picked loyalists. In a highly suspicious maneuver, the newly minted leader bypassed appointing a conventional commissioner, opting instead to immediately crown a new chief of police. The chosen figurehead stepping into that supreme authority was Chief James Burke. Having infiltrated the force back in 1986, his file was already bleeding with severe misconduct, complaints by the early 90s, allegations heavily featuring uniformed liaisons with underground escorts directly inside his government vehicle. Every single dirty secret had been meticulously logged by the Internal Oversight Division. The lingering mystery remained. How did an individual with such a deeply flawed background consistently leapfrog over clean, highly qualified officers on the promotional ladder? His deep-rooted ties to Suffolk County's political elite traced back to a dark chapter when he was merely 13 years old. Growing up in the quiet suburban enclave of Smithtown, nestled within Long Island's Suffolk County, his reality shifted when a local gang of youths was apprehended for killing a 13-year-old child. The victim, John Pass, endured an unimaginably gruesome demise. His lifeless body was discovered hidden behind a local schoolhouse, his airways brutally obstructed with heavy rocks. Detectives hit a brick wall early on, struggling to untangle the web of lies and identify the true perpetrators. Ultimately, James Burke stepped into the spotlight, turning on his own inner circle to serve as the prosecution's key informant. Handling that prosecution back in 1979 was Tom Spott, an aggressively ambitious young attorney who crossed paths with the 13-year-old informant. Securing a high-profile conviction through that critical testimony effectively launched Tom Spott's career, establishing him as a formidable contender for district attorney. Decades later, that ambition would materialize when he finally seized absolute control of the agency. Operating as a dark mentor, he eventually elevated James Burke to the position of chief investigator under his own command. Leaving the traditional Suffolk County Police ranks behind, the transfer granted the detective unprecedented authority and unchecked access within the judicial system. The timing was chilling. Just as investigators unearthed Shannon Gilbert's remains near Oak Beach, James Burke secured the role of chief of police, a sudden promotion authorized by County Executive Steve Baloney. The executive would later claim heavy-handed intimidation forced his hand, strong-arming him into approving the controversial candidate despite a massive disciplinary history. Immediately following this abrupt rise to absolute power, a ruthless purge began. He dismantled the existing leadership, ousting key figures like Homicide Division Commander Dominic Varon. Until that exact moment, that ousted commander had been spearheading the massive hunt for the Long Island serial killer along Gilgo Beach. Seizing control, the new chief terminated the lead detective without conducting a single operational debriefing to review the active murder files. The entire serial killer probe was essentially obliterated, forcing authorities to restart from nothing. His shocking appointment sent ripples through the agency, followed closely by a disturbing, dead silence surrounding the coastal murder investigation. It is worth noting that 2012, his inaugural year at the helm, brought the catastrophic arrival of Hurricane Sandy. Locally referred to as Superstorm Sandy, the violent weather event decimated regions across Long Island, New Jersey, and New York City, leaving some to question if a natural disaster stalled the investigative momentum. Yet, within elite law enforcement circles, few bought the storm as the true primary excuse. Suspicions mounted that the chief actively blocked federal agents from local turf to conceal the sinister off-duty activities he and his inner circle were engaged in. Disturbing witness testimonies and unsealed documents began painting a much darker picture of James Burke. Evidence suggested he personally frequented illicit underground gatherings in Oak Beach during 2009, mere months before the mass grave was unearthed. The revelation that a high-ranking authority figure was actively participating in such depravity directly inside the very jurisdiction, exactly where, Shannon Gilbert vanished from a sparsely populated enclave just steps away from the secret graveyard, clarifying his desperate motive to keep federal eyes looking elsewhere. A suffocating drought of information paralyzed the Gilgo Beach case for years. The stalemate finally broke in late 2021 when voters ushered in completely fresh leadership at the district attorney's office. Ray Tierney took the reins, joined by an incoming commissioner with a legendary track record commanding the detectives of the NYPD. That seasoned law enforcement veteran was Rodney Harrison. By early 2022, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison mobilized a massive joint task force, integrating federal agents alongside regional authorities to hunt the phantom using advanced forensic technologies that simply did not exist 10 years prior. Behind the scenes, an unnamed operative completely shifted the momentum. A female state trooper reportedly took the initiative to dig back through the chilling, dusty files connected to victim Amber Lynn Costello. Standing out among the dead, she was the sole target who actually resided locally in the town of Babylon, just a stone's throw from the desolate Ocean Parkway. Her 2009 vanishing carried a deeply unsettling backstory. A surviving housemate managed to sketch out a physical profile of a specific customer, strongly suspected to be the final individual in her presence. The witness described the phantom buyer as a hulking, monstrous figure. Standing an imposing 6'4" to 6'5" tall, this massive individual had reportedly been targeted by the women in a dangerous bait-and-switch scheme, pocketing his cash while denying him the illicit exchange. Her roommate suddenly intervened, playing the role of an enraged boyfriend to drive the client away. Furious, the displaced client fired off an ominous text to Amber Costello, remarking on the perceived disrespect. Expecting compensation, he lured her with a substantial cash offer. Leaving her phone behind, she approached his vehicle the following morning, vanishing forever. Dave Scholler, the aforementioned roommate, watched Amber depart in a 2002 green Chevy Avalanche alongside the same figure from the previous day. State investigators had already zeroed in on Massapequa Park, Long Island, viewing it as a critical hotspot. Years prior, federal agents traced burner phones crucial to the investigation, registering signals in Massapequa Park, Long Island, as well as near a Midtown Manhattan transit hub. Authorities deduced the perpetrator likely commuted between Midtown Manhattan and Massapequa Park. This prompted a targeted search for Chevy Avalanches, specifically first-generation models registered within Massapequa Park. The database yielded a single, chilling name, Rex Heuermann. Subsequent surveillance operations revealed a physically imposing figure. Observing his massive stature, detectives suspected they had their predator. By July 2023, over 10 years after unearthing the initial remains, Rex Heuermann, an architect operating in Manhattan, faced arrest and indictment for slaughtering 3 of the Gilgo Four: Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello. 6 months later, in January 2024, prosecutors added a 4th count for executing Maureen Brainard-Barnes. By June 2024, meticulously processing items confiscated from his residence led authorities to hit Heuermann with 2 additional homicide charges. The first stemmed from the 2003 slaying of Jessica Taylor, a 20-year-old former inner-city youth counselor. When she vanished in July 2003, she had been surviving as a New York City sex worker. Searchers discovered her mutilated, partially dismembered body that July within the desolate Manorville woodlands. 8 years passed before investigators located her remaining fragments along Gilgo Beach. Following the new indictments, Elizabeth Basio remembered her daughter as deeply affectionate and empathetic, someone who naturally brought joy to others. Possessing an effortless sense of humor, Basil noted the victim held a profound dedication to nurturing youth. The heartbreak lies in her stolen future. Jessica possessed the warmth of an exceptional mother. The subsequent indictment reached further into the past. Sandra Costilla vanished in 1993 at age 28. A native of Trinidad and Tobago residing in New York, law enforcement largely dismissed her as a transient. Despite holding a final recorded residence in Queens, detectives deduced she was no longer staying there when murdered. That November, local hunters stumbled upon her remains deep inside the timberland of North Sea, Southampton. Although officials never explicitly verified if Castilla engaged in sex work, they characterized her circumstances as virtually identical. By December 2024, the grim tally expanded. Heuermann faced prosecution for slaughtering 24-year-old Valerie Mack. Entering the world as Valerie Lynn Fulton in Atlantic City, New Jersey, Mack endured a turbulent childhood in the foster system until the Mack family intervened. Relocating to Wildwood with relatives, she continuously drifted between New Jersey and Philadelphia. Beginning around the mid-1990s, she accumulated multiple vice-related infractions throughout Philadelphia. Detectives learned she solicited clients digitally under the pseudonym Melissa Taylor, while occasionally resorting to street-level encounters. In November 2000, a hunter navigating the Manorville woods uncovered her butchered torso, tightly bound in heavily taped plastic trash bags. Over 10 years later, searchers uncovered her skeletal fragments along Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach, connecting her grim fate to the broader pattern. Superficially, Rex Heuermann masqueraded as a typical New Yorker, a married father and employed architect residing peacefully in Massapequa Park. He routinely traveled into Manhattan, maintaining a professional workspace merely steps from the Empire State Building. Yet beneath this mundane exterior lurked a profound, calculated evil, according to the prosecution. Rex Heuermann ran an independent architectural firm right in Midtown Manhattan, projecting an aura of white-collar prestige. Colleagues recognized him as an expediter, a bureaucratic navigator capable of securing elusive permits for upscale condo renovations or historical preservation projects. He maintained a seemingly stable household, employing his biological daughter at his firm while helping raise a special needs stepson. He seamlessly blended into various professional networking groups and exclusive local hunting organizations. Locals held split opinions. Many neighbors viewed him as perfectly ordinary, while others sensed a quiet, unremarkable peculiarity. Ultimately, he meticulously engineered an impeccably deceptive dual existence, hiding a monster behind suburban normalcy. Investigators immediately caught an unsettling detail. Despite the suspect's profession as an architect, his residence stood in a state of sheer decay. The property sat rotting. Neighboring suburban lots boasted manicured grass, flawless siding, and fresh coats of paint, forming a stark, disturbing contrast. The structural neglect deepened into something darker, upon discovering he had grown up inside those very walls, eventually purchasing the property from his mother. This specific spatial attachment hints at a profound psychological anchoring, revealing twisted undercurrents lurking beneath a mundane facade. A design professional residing behind a collapsing porch propped up by mere 2x4s defies all rational logic. The looming question remained: how exactly did detectives tether Heuermann to America's most notoriously elusive string of serial homicides? The breakthrough demanded agonizingly slow investigative procedures colliding with modern forensic advancements. Cold files were torn open until a singular, monumental revelation surfaced. The initial legal charges dropped on July 14, 2023, exposing a 32 or 33-page affidavit to the press. The detailed document left observers stunned, meticulously unraveling the eventual capture of Rex Heuermann. Speculation had constantly swirled regarding the prosecution's hidden evidence, pondering what forensic fragments could actually survive on the bodies, considering the corpses decayed alongside Ocean Parkway for countless seasons before extraction. The public continually wondered if authorities possessed microscopic strands. Whispers circulated regarding genetic material linking those buried bones to a definitive killer. Ultimately, the speculation proved absolutely correct. Crime scene technicians managed to extract multiple distinct follicles from the deceased, isolating strands belonging to both men and women. Detectives were forced to orchestrate covert biological retrievals, quietly harvesting genetic material from Rex Heuermann and his household relatives to verify the macabre forensic puzzle. A shadowy surveillance operation commenced, tracking the suspect's every movement to snatch those crucial biological traces. Agents lurked near his residence, targeting discarded garbage. They successfully wiped down empty containers plucked straight from the curbside trash. The pivotal tactical strike occurred when an undercover team intercepted a trash takeout carton directly outside his Manhattan workplace. A discarded crust and a crumpled napkin provided the ultimate prize. Forensic profiling locked onto an unmistakable genetic signature identifying Rex Heuermann. This exact profile directly mirrored the biological footprint left behind at a burial site. Investigators mirrored this tactic with his offspring, shadowing the young woman across a commuter railway to secure a discarded energy drink can. Laboratory analysis eventually confirmed that distinct strands discovered among the remains originated from his spouse. Preliminary results relied upon mitochondrial testing, a technique specifically tracing ancestral maternal bloodlines. Subsequent revelations confirmed deeper nuclear profiling. Experts definitively tethered no fewer than 3 specific filaments back to the wife of Rexher. Early reports indicated that the deceased Amber Costello harbored a single strand linked directly to the suspect's child, Victoria. As subsequent grand jury filings expanded the grim roster of the fallen, forensic experts identified a toddler-aged filament from his child, resting upon a corpse slain back in 2000. The chilling reality that 3 separate household members unknowingly deposited their biological signatures across various victims paints a uniquely disturbing portrait. Rex Heuermann being taken into custody paralyzed the community, yet the sheer, suffocating volume of evidence connecting him to the Gilgo Beach atrocities proved utterly terrifying. Detectives unearthed highly disturbing anomalies while raiding the unassuming property located along First Avenue in Masipa Park. A profound stroke of luck for the prosecution was Rex Heuermann operating as an extreme, compulsive accumulator of objects. Interior crime scene photographs revealed towering cardboard monuments of clutter, completely suffocating every available living space. The cellar concealed a massive, concrete-reinforced armory holding an arsenal of over 280 varying firearms. Rifles and handguns sat side by side. A significant portion lacked legal paperwork, yet every single weapon belonged to Rex Heuermann. A hidden, clandestine chamber also existed within the structure, leaving investigators to grapple with its dark, unknown purpose. The execution of the warrants yielded north of 300 electronics. A staggering assortment of mobile communicators was recovered. Physical storage drives, compact discs, and decaying laptops essentially served as a goldmine of incriminating digital footprints. The suspect operated countless hidden web profiles, linking disposable mobile numbers to fabricated dating personas under stolen identities. He essentially wove a complex, deceitful digital labyrinth in a desperate bid to mask his sinister electronic trail. The goal was severing Rex Heuermann completely from the hardware. However, a fatal oversight occurred. His primary router signal continuously anchored the network routing protocol to those encrypted profiles. If the suspect had strictly avoided bridging those illicit devices to his domestic or corporate wireless networks, the electronic camouflage might have held strong. Additionally, covert cameras captured the killer physically loading prepaid currency onto a disposable handset, a terrifying action that convinced the task force he was actively preparing to claim another life. Subsequent analysis uncovered a specific digital file on the seized hardware that Rex Heuermann aggressively attempted to wipe from existence. Yet, highly specialized digital analysts deployed by the prosecution managed to successfully resurrect the purged data from the corrupted storage drives. Detectives unearthed something chilling inside his hardware, a digital file prosecutors described as a meticulous blueprint for his lethal crimes. The file, labeled HK2 2002-04, emerged from the drive's dead zones. When someone erases their digital footprint, they assume those records vanish entirely. In reality, the operating system simply marks that specific digital real estate as vacant. Those ghostly bytes linger in the shadows until fresh information permanently overwrites them. Cyber experts can resurrect these buried fragments using a specialized digital excavation technique known as file carving. Authorities suspect Heuermann used the HK202-04 manifesto to orchestrate his fatal encounters with terrifying precision. The file contained 4 primary categories. 1. Simply titled Problems. Read like a tactical manual for dodging law enforcement. Another chapter cataloged the exact inventory required to execute his string of dark operations. He utilized cold abbreviations DS for disposal sites and TRG for targets. The other 3 folders included pre-prep, detailing a chilling prelude, scouting victims, evaluating his vehicle, and running quiet reconnaissance. He tracked weather patterns and hunted hidden lenses. Another prep section outlined his immediate countdown, like arranging a staging zone. It mentioned securing holding pens and constructing specialized tables. A grim post-event checklist detailed his cleanup, shredding documents, swapping tires, and incinerating gloves to vanish without a trace. He mandated ditching tools and memorizing alibis. Additional logs tracked abduction and transport tactics, explicitly warning himself never to charge fuel purchases. A dark subhead covered remains preparation, scrubbing the victims, erasing genetic markers, excising tattoos, severing extremities, and wrapping them securely for transit. Another terrifying section simply read, "Dispose of following." It demanded the destruction of hardware, garments, personal effects, unsettling props, and wooden objects. He reminded himself to torch clothes and digital tracks. A final note advised getting rest, noting exhaustion invited deadly mistakes. He critiqued his own brutality. Strike the face harder, use thicker cordage, noting thinner bindings had snapped under intense physical pressure. A separate notes section even cited exact pages from John Douglas's Mindhunter, studying how federal profilers track apex predators. With Rex Heuermann steadily inching closer to his courtroom reckoning, the legal warfare has officially ignited. The accused denies everything, and his legal representatives are launching aggressive counterattacks. They initially launched an unsuccessful strike to ban the crucial nuclear genetic evidence from the proceedings. The defense claimed the prosecution's genetic science lacked mainstream backing. The vital clues left on the victims were merely fragments of rootless hair. Until just recently, investigators hit a brick wall when dealing with follicles lacking roots. Previously, forensic techs could only glean vague, generalized traits from those delicate strands. To secure a definitive genetic fingerprint from a severed shaft, detectives had to pivot toward cutting-edge laboratory innovations. Investigators ultimately partnered up with an advanced California facility known as Astrea Forensics. This laboratory possessed a revolutionary technique for pulling pure genetic profiles from dead hair fragments, executing the process flawlessly. Immediately following the indictment of Rex Heuermann, his defense attorney, Michael Brown, made his first tactical move. He fought to have the genetic breakthrough tossed, arguing this specific forensic protocol had never seen the inside of a criminal courtroom. While highly standard in clinical genetic screenings and identifying anonymous casualties, experts frequently rely on it to bring fallen soldiers home. The underlying science remains virtually bulletproof, yet Heuermann's counsel pushed the narrative that without prior judicial history, the technique was legally baseless. On September 3, 2025, Judge Timothy Massey finally delivered his ruling after a grueling Fry hearing. This specialized pre-trial procedure specifically determines if a novel investigative method holds scientific weight. Judge Massey declared the contested genetic findings fully admissible for the upcoming trial. He backed his decision using expert testimonies, academic journals, and prior legal applications across California and Idaho. Brown instantly launched another appeal, arguing New York statutes forbid corporate, for-profit laboratories from handling criminal evidence. By September 23rd, that maneuver was also blocked. The defense then pivoted, demanding the case be shattered into separate trials. Brown claimed grouping the accusations would unfairly bias the jury against his client. He highlighted glaring inconsistencies between the various fatal encounters, citing distinct timelines, varied execution styles, and diverse scattering grounds. The state fired back, insisting the targets were deeply linked by region, shared profiles, trace forensics, and that deeply disturbing digital playbook created by Heuermann himself. On September 23rd, Judge Massey decreed the proceedings would consolidate into one unified trial. When this tape was cut, the calendar remained blank. However, defense attorneys were granted until January 13th to submit further pretrial filings upon acquiring the final evidentiary disclosures, featuring a staggering 723-page manifest, an index of over 7,000 individuals potentially holding critical insights into the allegations, alongside a roster of specialized experts. Heuermann is scheduled to face the tribunal again in January 2026. Despite Rex Heuermann formally facing 7 homicide charges, the dark narrative is far from finished. Investigators unearthed 10 distinct sets of human remains scattered across Gilgo Beach. Multiple victims still await justice, their killers ghosting through the system. 10 lost souls are inextricably linked to this sprawling investigation, regardless of whether Rex Heuermann officially bears the blame. Among the earliest discoveries was a woman finally identified as Karen Vergata. For decades, she existed solely as the enigmatic Peaches, a moniker hauntingly derived from her dismembered torso, which surfaced inside Nassau County at Hempstead Lake State Park, bearing a prominently inked fruit. Her severed limbs eventually materialized along Ocean Parkway alongside the others, while her infant child was discarded near Valerie, Mack. Law enforcement tracked down the infant's father, describing him as a compliant witness. Curiously, he never flagged their disappearance. Detectives noted that Jackson lived a deeply fractured existence, completely alienated from her own blood relatives, and given her transient lifestyle alongside the armed forces, slipping off the radar without triggering alarms was a grim probability. Ultimately, Tanya and Tatiana were buried in Alabama with profound military tributes. The mystery deepened in April 2011 with the unearthing of an unknown casualty dubbed Asian Doe, as detailed by District Attorney Ray Tierney. This biological male of Asian descent, roughly 17 to 23 years old, was draped in feminine garments. Detectives theorize a brutal bludgeoning ended their life around 2006, yet the remains lay hidden until April 4, 2011. Profilers strongly suspect this elusive figure might have navigated the shadows of New York City, potentially surviving through underground sex trades before their demise. A chilling ambiguity has persistently shrouded this specific corpse, not merely due to their profound anonymity, but the killer's operational signature drastically shifted. This particular individual was ruthlessly battered to death. The ethnic profile also breaks the established pattern, sparking intense debate over their connection to the wider web. Yet, experts broadly accept the link. Then comes Shannon Gilbert, the missing escort, whose vanishing accidentally lured detectives to the horrors of Gilgo Beach. Over 12 months later, searchers pulled her from an adjacent bog. The relentless legal crusade, launched by her family, fueled by her mother's fierce advocacy, effectively forced authorities to keep hunting this apex predator. In contrast, shortly after unearthing her bones, the Suffolk County Police Department hastily labeled her tragic end a bizarre accident. Investigators officially theorized she had simply perished from elemental exposure. They coldly speculated narcotics fueled her erratic final moments. Yet, a private postmortem, spearheaded by former New York Chief Medical Examiner Michael Baden, completely dismantled a narrative of a biological or accidental fatality, indicating no physiological markers of chemical intoxication or aquatic asphyxiation. Although finding a definitive medical cause proved impossible, Baden's 2016 dossier concluded the physical trauma heavily mirrored homicidal strangulation. Gilbert's kin remained steadfastly convinced she was hunted down. As Rex Heuermann creeps closer to his courtroom reckoning, a chilling dread lingers. Who else is buried out there? And if so, will the gavel ever fall for their stolen lives? The grisly saga of the Long Island serial killer transcended typical homicide lore. Across 10 grueling years, it morphed into a profound reflection of societal decay. It exposed systemic apathy, bureaucratic lethargy, and the fatal cost of looking away when society's outcasts go missing. This entire investigation serves as a grim magnifying glass for the structural flaws plaguing criminal justice. It highlights the lethal disregard for marginalized populations, specifically showcasing predatory violence against women. Long Island has birthed other monsters before, namely Joel Rifkin, who ultimately confessed to butchering 17 escorts. These predators operated under a chillingly cynical psychological assumption that marginalized victims would never spark police manhunts or missing persons reports. But here, that logic completely shattered. The victims' families screamed for answers, demanding basic human dignity for their slaughtered daughters. Their sheer tenacity eventually forged the path to a monumental capture. The ultimate bone-chilling lesson here is clear. Atrocities of this massive scale will eventually drag their architect into the harsh light. A collective sigh of relief washes over the community, grounded in the realization that malice will not conquer. For decades, these targets were reduced to marginal details, stripped of their humanity, disregarded, and buried under bureaucratic indifference. As the legal machinery closes in on Rex Heuermann, the relentless crusade to unearth the absolute reality intensifies. The grim narrative remains open until every stolen identity is restored and every silenced plea finally resonates. Heuermann officially denies the indictment in its entirety. As the mountain of forensic data swells, so does the quiet expectation that the absolute magnitude of the horrors concealed along Gilgo Beach will inevitably bleed out from the shadows. This concludes a deeply unsettling edition of Courtroom Confidential Case Notes. Viewers are invited to support the investigation, subscribe to the archive, and delve into the curated playlist for similarly exhaustive, meticulously detailed descents into the criminal mind. The tragedy unearthed along the desolate stretches of Gilgo Beach is far more than a chilling chronicle of crime. It is a profound wake-up call to the soul of our society. For over a decade, a predator thrived in the shadows, not merely through his own calculations, but through the lethal silence of our collective apathy. When we allow ourselves to categorize the vulnerable as disposable or marginalized, we don't just fail them, we provide a sanctuary for evil to breathe. The victims were daughters, sisters, and mothers who operated in the perilous fringes of society, yet their humanity was never a footnote. Their lives were not defined by their struggles, but by their inherent, unbreakable worth. The breakthrough in this case wasn't just a triumph of forensic science. It was a victory of unwavering love. It was the relentless screams of grieving families who refused to let their daughters remain anonymous, just buried under bureaucratic indifference. The lesson is clear. Justice must never be a privilege of the prominent. It is a fundamental right of the human spirit. We must vow to look closer at those society tries to make invisible. Because when we choose to see the humanity in everyone, regardless of their path, we strip away the darkness where monsters hide. No soul is a lost cause, and no life is ever truly silenced until we stop listening.